I used to believe marriage was a kind of safety net, a long weaving of years that made two people inseparable. 47 years with the same man. That had to mean I knew him better than anyone. Or so I told myself. Our mornings were a mirror of each other. He made coffee, I buttered toast. He read the paper, I watered the plants. It felt ordinary, comfortable even. But comfort can be deceptive. I started to notice the pauses, how long his eyes lingered on nothing, how quickly he changed the subject if our son's name surfaced. I never said anything. Maybe I was too tired of grieving, too practiced at silence. One evening as I folded laundry, I asked softly, "Do you ever think of him?" His jaw tightened. We agreed not to do this, remember? The past is the past. I nodded, though my chest ached. That was how we always ended it, with a nod, with silence. We survived by avoiding the questions that threatened to split us apart. The house itself seemed complicit. Its walls had absorbed our routines. The ticking of the grandfather clock. The way the front porch creaked under his heavy steps. Everything looked so steady, so unshaken, but beneath it I sensed cracks. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch him pacing the hallway, whispering things I couldn't quite hear. When I asked, he'd insist it was nothing, just a dream he couldn't shake. The truth is, I stopped pressing. 47 years of marriage teaches you when not to push, when to let shadows stay shadows. Or maybe I was afraid of what lived inside them. Still, unease grew like mold in the corners of my mind. I thought of the small lies I'd caught over the years, receipts from places he claimed he'd never been, locked drawers he brushed off as old junk, the way he avoided the attic like it was cursed ground. Once, I tried the drawer. It wouldn't budge. He caught me. His voice was sharp, colder than I'd ever heard. "Don't go through my things." I remember stepping back, stunned. My husband, the man who never raised his voice, suddenly sounded like a stranger. Life slipped back into routine, but I couldn't unhear it. His tone had carried a warning, a line I wasn't supposed to cross. And I didn't. Not then. Our friends envied our marriage, called it unbreakable. They saw the photographs on the mantel, the anniversaries celebrated with cake and candles. They never saw the silences, the unanswered questions, the way his hand sometimes trembled when the phone rang. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, what kind of man keeps secrets from the woman who has shared his bed for nearly half a century? But late at night, when he fell asleep in his chair, I studied his face in the glow of the television. Wrinkles I knew by heart, a jawline I had kissed 1,000 times, and yet looking at him I felt something foreign crawl up my spine. It wasn't love. It wasn't trust, it was doubt. And that doubt, small and quiet, was about to shatter the life I thought I knew. Because soon, the past we had buried would claw its way back, wearing the face of the son we lost. Doubt has a cruel way of stirring old ghosts. Once it took hold of me, the first face it summoned was our son's. I can still see that night, as if it happened yesterday. The sharp autumn air, the porch light flickering. The silence that fell when his bedroom door opened to nothing but an empty bed. We searched the house, the yard, the street. My voice cracked, calling his name into the darkness. Desperate, certain he would appear from the shadows with that mischievous grin. But he didn't. The police came, their radios crackling, flashlights sweeping through fields and ditches. Neighbors joined with lanterns and dogs. I stood by the mailbox, trembling, waiting for headlights that never carried him home. "They'll find him," I whispered back then. "They have to." But the days stretched into weeks, the search parties dwindled, and our son's name became another headline fading from the local paper. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, fingers locked around a cup of cold coffee. My husband stood behind me, arms crossed. "We can't keep torturing ourselves," he said. "We have to move on." "Move on?" My voice was raw. "He's our son." His eyes hardened. "He's gone. And no amount of crying will bring him back." It felt like a slap. I wanted to scream, to claw at him for being so calm, so detached. Instead, I swallowed my grief and stared into the untouched cup. From then on, the subject became forbidden territory. His silence was final, his refusal absolute. Friends stopped asking, family stopped visiting, and I buried my questions with my tears. Still, the memories haunted me. The little boy who loved baseball, who left his socks scattered across the living room, who used to hug me so tightly I could feel his heartbeat against mine. That child vanished into thin air, leaving only photographs framed on the mantel. But now, with every glance at my husband, with every locked drawer and late-night whisper, I wondered, had I misread his silence all these years? Was it grief or was it guilt? One evening not long ago, I dared to ask, "Do you ever wonder what really happened?" I said, my voice trembling as I cleared the dinner plates. He didn't look up. "We've been through this. There's nothing more to say." "You never cry," I pressed. "Not once." "Don't you miss him?" The fork in his hand froze. For a second his face shifted, just a flicker, but enough to chill me then. Coldly he said, "Drop it." I did, outwardly, but inside. The question festered. That night, lying in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling. 47 years of marriage, and I realized I had never truly known what lurked behind his silences. I thought of the attic he avoided, the drawer he locked, the way his hands sometimes shook when the phone rang, and for the first time I felt a gnawing certainty. The answers I feared most were hidden within the man sleeping beside me. Soon, I would learn that the FBI agreed. The unease in my chest grew heavier with every passing day. It pressed against me like a weight I couldn't shake, urging me to look where I had never dared before. It was a Saturday morning when I finally gave in. He had gone out for groceries, leaving me alone in the house. My eyes drifted toward the attic door, a place he never touched, a place he warned me not to bother with. Dust rose as I pulled the ladder down, the wood creaking under my steps. The attic smelled of mothballs and old wood, the kind of scent that clung to forgotten years. Sunlight cut through cracks in the roof, spotlighting boxes stacked like tombstones of another life. I knelt by the first one, brushing away cobwebs. Inside were harmless things: Christmas ornaments, yellowed tablecloths, photo albums from vacations we once enjoyed. But then, deeper in the pile, I found a box taped shut with layers of brown packing tape, brittle from time. My hands shook as I peeled it away. Inside, I found photographs of our son I had never seen before. He looked older than I remembered, almost as if the pictures were taken after the night he vanished. One showed him standing near a rusted truck I didn't recognize, his eyes hollow, his smile forced. My throat closed. No, this can't be real. My whisper trembled in the empty attic. Beneath the photographs were letters, handwritten, scrawled in uneven ink. Some addressed to me but never delivered. Others written by our son, begging for someone to let him come home. I covered my mouth, fighting the urge to scream. Then I saw it, a small object wrapped in cloth. I unfolded it slowly, heart pounding. It was a keychain, our son's favorite, the one he never left without. A baseball glove charm scuffed at the edges. But the police had told us it was never found, that it had disappeared along with him. And yet here it was, hidden in my attic. My body went cold. The timeline, the explanations, the way my husband had insisted on forgetting, it all tangled together like barbed wire in my mind. He said our son must have run away, that he never left any trace. But this was a trace, and he had kept it. Footsteps on the driveway jolted me. My husband was back. Panic clawed at me. I shoved the photographs, letters, and keychain back into the box, taping it as best I could before sliding it beneath the others. My fingers trembled so hard I nearly dropped the lid. The attic door creaked as I pulled it shut. My breath ragged, my heart racing so violently I thought it might give me away. Downstairs, his voice called out. "You here?" I forced a steady tone. "Yes, just tidying up." He walked into the kitchen with grocery bags, his eyes flicking toward me for only a second before shifting away. But that second was enough. I thought I saw suspicion there, as though he already knew where I had been. I pressed a hand to my stomach, trying to quiet the nausea twisting inside me. I had uncovered something I could not ignore, yet I had buried it again, too terrified to confront him. The evidence was upstairs, waiting, and I knew one day soon it would demand to be seen again. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon, sharp and deliberate. Not the casual rap of a neighbor, not the hurried tap of the postman. It was heavy, official. I froze halfway down the hallway, my hand still clutching a dish towel. My husband appeared from the living room, his eyes narrowing. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he muttered, "I'll get it." But I was already walking toward the door, something pulling me forward. When I opened it, 2 men in dark suits stood on the porch. Their badges glinted in the pale light. "Mrs. Carter?" the taller one asked, his voice polite but edged with authority. "Yes," I managed. My throat felt dry. "I'm Special Agent Harris, and this is Agent Monroe. We'd like to ask you and your husband a few questions regarding an old case." "May we come in?" "Old case." I didn't need him to say more. My knees nearly buckled, but I stepped aside. The agents entered, their presence filling the room like a storm. My husband stood stiffly by the fireplace, jaw tight. Harris pulled out a notebook while Monroe scanned the walls, the photographs, the life we had so carefully displayed. "It's about your son," Harris said finally, looking directly at me. "The night he went missing. We're reviewing unresolved files following new leads." My breath hitched. 47 years had passed. 47 years of silence, why now? My husband cleared his throat. "After all this time, what could you possibly need from us? We told the police everything back then." Harris's pen scratched across the page. "We're revisiting inconsistencies. Records suggest gaps in timelines, unaccounted movements. We need to clarify where you were during those critical days." I looked at my husband. His face was calm, too calm, the way it always was when he wanted to shut a door on the past. "It was a tragedy," he said flatly. "Our boy ran off. End of story." "Sir," Monroe interjected, voice measured, "did you ever keep items belonging to him? Anything not turned over to investigators at the time?" My pulse pounded. The attic box flashed in my mind, the photographs, the letters, the keychain. My lips parted, but no words came out. My husband's gaze snapped to mine, sharp as a blade. "No," he said quickly. "We gave them everything." I forced myself to nod, though bile rose in my throat. The agents exchanged a glance, then closed their notebooks. "We may need to follow up," Harris said, rising from the chair. "Thank you for your time." When the door clicked shut behind them, silence swallowed the room. My husband turned to me, eyes dark. "Don't let them rattle you," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "It's routine. Bureaucrats stirring up old dust." But I had seen it. The flicker of fear in his eyes, quick as lightning but unmistakable. He carried secrets. And the FBI was circling closer. I stood there, the dish towel still clenched in my hand, wondering not if, but when the truth would finally break open. The house felt heavier after the agents left, as if the walls themselves had absorbed their questions. I couldn't shake the image of their notebooks opening, their pens scratching, their eyes flicking between us. Something inside me had shifted, though I tried to move through the evening as if it hadn't. By dinner, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I set down my fork, my voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me they'd be asking about you? About where you were that night?" He looked up, his expression smooth, practiced. "Because it doesn't matter. They're wasting time." "It does matter," I said, my throat tight. "They wouldn't be here after 47 years if it didn't." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You're letting them get in your head." "That's what they do. They plant doubts. You've always been too sensitive." The word stung, sharper than I expected. "Too sensitive?" Our son disappeared. How could I not be? "Enough," he snapped, the sound cutting through the room. His eyes bore into mine. "We've lived nearly 5 decades since then. We survived. Don't start tearing it all apart now," but I couldn't stop. The attic box, the keychain, the letters, they pulsed in my memory. "I found things," I whispered. "Things that don't add up. Pictures, dates that don't fit your story." His fork clattered against the plate. For a moment his mask slipped, revealing something harder, darker. Then it was gone, replaced with a tight smile. "You must have misremembered," he said. "It's been years. Memories blur. You always did struggle with details, gaslighting. I didn't have that word back then, but I felt it. The way he twisted reality until I questioned my own eyes. I pushed back my chair, heart pounding. Don't do that to me. Don't make me think I'm losing my mind. He stood too, leaning across the table, his shadow stretching long over me. If you keep pushing, you'll regret it. Let it go. For the first time in 47 years, I wasn't looking at my husband. I was looking at a stranger. His voice, his face, his words, they all belonged to someone else, someone I didn't recognize. The meal went cold between us, untouched. I retreated to the bedroom later, lying awake while he moved heavily through the house. Every sound he made scraped against my nerves. Sleep didn't come. Only the memory of the FBI's knock and the way his eyes had flickered with fear. Something had cracked open between us, and no matter how hard he pressed, no matter how carefully he tried to patch it, I knew it would never seal again. The knock came again, this time heavier, deliberate. When I opened the door, the same two agents stood there, their faces solemn, carrying folders clutched tight under their arms. Felt my knees weaken before a single word was spoken. "Mrs. Whitaker?" the taller agent began. "We've uncovered new information. We'd like to share it with you privately. The word echoed in my head like a warning bell. My husband wasn't home, off at one of his endless errands. A part of me was grateful. Another part trembled, terrified of what I was about to hear. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless meals, celebrated birthdays, and grieved anniversaries. Now it felt like a courtroom, and I was the lone witness. The agent slid a photograph across the wood grain. It was faded, torn at the edges, but the boy's face was unmistakable. My son. Only this time, standing beside him was a man I barely recognized, except for the jawline, the height, the stance. My husband, decades younger, caught in the grainy snapshot like a ghost pulled from the shadows. I pressed a hand to my chest. "Where did you get this?" My voice cracked, betraying me. "A witness recently came forward," the shorter agent said gently. "She kept journals. This picture was tucked inside one of them. She described seeing your husband with your son the night he disappeared." The words slammed into me. I shook my head. No. There must be a mistake. Harold told me he was working late. He swore he never saw our boy that evening. The agent opened the folder further, revealing photocopied pages of neat, slanted handwriting. I read fragments. "Man with gray car. Boy looked uneasy, arguing." My breath hitched with each word. "And there's more," the taller agent added, sliding another sheet forward. "Financial records. Your husband withdrew large sums of cash around the same time. Money that was never accounted for." The room spun. I gripped the table edge as if it could anchor me to the life I thought I knew. 47 years of marriage, of building a home, of raising children together. And suddenly it all felt like a carefully constructed illusion. I whispered, more to myself than to them. "I don't understand." How could he hide this from me? From all of us? The agent's eyes softened. "Sometimes the people closest to us keep the darkest secrets." Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. If I allowed myself to break here in front of strangers, I feared I'd never piece myself together again. When the agents left, the kitchen was suffocatingly quiet. I sat motionless, the photograph burning in my hand. I should have torn it, burned it, denied it. Instead, I tucked it into my apron pocket close to my heart, where suspicion and love now warred endlessly. And for the first time, I dreaded the sound of my husband's key in the lock. The next morning, I was still clutching the photograph like it might dissolve if I let go. My husband moved around the kitchen with his usual ease, whistling faintly, pouring coffee, as if the world hadn't just collapsed at my feet. I studied his face, every line, every wrinkle, the familiar curve of his smile, and wondered how much of it was real, how much had been a mask. The doorbell rang before I could say a word. My heart jumped, fearing it was the FBI again, but when I opened the door, it wasn't an agent standing there. It was a woman. Her hair was silver now, but I could tell she had once been striking. Her eyes, sharp and unsettled, locked onto mine. "Are you Mrs. Whitaker?" she asked softly. "Yes," I answered, tightening my grip on the doorknob. She hesitated before stepping inside when I motioned for her. She sat at the edge of the sofa like someone unsure if they belonged. "My name is Evelyn Carter," she said. "I knew your husband a long time ago." Her words made my stomach twist. I forced a polite nod, but my pulse hammered. "Knew him how?" Evelyn's gaze dropped to her hands. "We were involved. Back when your son went missing. I didn't come forward then because I was terrified. But now, after hearing the FBI's questions, I can't stay silent anymore." I felt the air leave my lungs. An affair. The word lodged itself in my throat, jagged and merciless. For decades I had trusted Harold without hesitation, defended him against every whisper of doubt. Now here was a stranger unraveling my marriage with a single confession. What exactly are you saying? My voice was sharper than I intended, but I couldn't contain the storm inside me. She looked at me, eyes brimming with regret. That night, Harold told me he had to meet your son. He was agitated, said there were things that needed to be handled. I begged him not to go. He left anyway. When he came back to me later, his shirt was torn, and there was blood on his sleeve. The room tilted. I clutched the armrest to steady myself. You're lying, I whispered. You have to be. I wish I were, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. But I loved him once, and I can't live with the guilt of staying silent. The FBI already has my statement. They'll come back to you. Her words hit harder than any blow. My world, my marriage, was unraveling thread by thread, each revelation exposing something darker. Evelyn stood, smoothing her coat with trembling hands. I thought you deserved to know before it all comes crashing down. She left me there, silent and hollow, surrounded by the echoes of her confession. The walls of my home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison closing in. When Harold returned later that afternoon, smiling as though nothing had changed, I looked at him differently. I saw not my husband of 47 years, but a stranger cloaked in secrets. His life tangled with betrayal and violence, and for the first time, I wondered if the man I had built my life around had ever truly existed at all. When Harold walked through the door that evening, carrying his usual briefcase and humming under his breath, I felt the bile rise in my throat. I could still hear Evelyn's voice echoing in my ears, her confession, her trembling regret. My hands shook as I set his dinner plate on the table, not out of duty anymore, but as a test. Would he sense the change in me? Would he notice that I now looked at him as if he were a stranger? He sat down, loosened his tie, and offered me the same practiced smile I had fallen for nearly half a century ago. Long day, he muttered, reaching for the potatoes. I couldn't bear it. Harold, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. We need to talk. His fork hovered midair. His eyes flickered just for a second before he composed himself. Talk about what? The FBI, Evelyn Carter. Our son. The fork clattered against the plate. For the first time in years, I saw his mask slip. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, and silence stretched between us like a knife. Finally, he pushed his plate aside and leaned back. So, she told you, he said flatly. The room seemed to shrink. She told me you were with her that night. That you came back with blood on your shirt. His lips curled into something between a sneer and a sigh. She's exaggerating. She always did. He rubbed his temples. Yes, I was with her. I had to get away from this house, from the constant pressure, the fights with Michael. You don't know what it was like. He hated me, always defying me, disrespecting me. That night it boiled over, my chest constricted. So you admit it? You admit you lied all these years. I admit I wasn't honest, he said, his voice low. But I didn't hurt him. He came at me shouting, fists flying. I tried to stop him, tried to calm him down. The blood, he paused, his eyes darting. The blood wasn't his. It was mine, he hit me. I panicked and went to Evelyn because I couldn't face you like that. I stared at him, searching for truth in his words. But all I found was a web of half-truths and carefully woven excuses. You expect me to believe that? That after 47 years you just forgot to mention an affair, a fight, a night that ended with our son disappearing. His voice cracked, but not from sorrow, from frustration. I was protecting you. Protecting this family. What good would it have done for you to know? You would have blamed me, and maybe you're right. But I'm not the monster they're trying to paint me as. Tears blurred my vision. The man across from me was no longer my husband. He was a stranger twisting words, reshaping the past to keep his mask intact. My heart split between the love I had once felt and the horror I now carried. And as his eyes pleaded for me to believe him, I realized the most chilling truth of all. I no longer knew where his lies ended and reality began. The house felt unbearably quiet after his half-confession. The tick of the clock, the creak of the wooden beams, even the wind against the windows seemed to accuse me. I sat alone at the table long after Harold had gone upstairs, staring at the empty plates between us. My hands were still trembling, though from fear or anger I couldn't tell anymore. For 47 years, I had convinced myself that silence was a form of love. I told myself that trust meant not asking questions, not prying into the shadows where he kept his secrets. But tonight, those shadows pressed in on me, and I could no longer pretend they weren't there. I remembered the first time doubt brushed against me years ago when Michael disappeared. Harold had been cold, detached. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead I swallowed my grief and mirrored his silence. I thought if I didn't speak it aloud, maybe the pain would vanish. But silence doesn't erase. It festers. All these years I played my part in keeping the lie alive. When neighbors whispered, I defended him. When the police asked questions, I softened my answers, afraid they'd look too closely. Even when my own heart whispered that something was wrong, I pressed it down. I thought I was protecting my family, but I was protecting him. Protecting the man I thought I loved. The truth settled like a weight in my chest. This wasn't just his silence. It was mine too. I had been complicit. I rose from the table and walked into the living room. Photographs lined the mantel. Wedding pictures, family gatherings, forced smiles. I lifted one of Michael, his grin so full of life it ached to look at. My throat closed. How had I allowed his memory to be buried under layers of doubt and denial? How had I let Harold's voice drown out Michael's absence? Tears slid down my face, and with them came an avalanche of guilt. Maybe if I had spoken sooner, pressed harder, insisted on the truth, the past wouldn't still haunt us. Maybe justice would have come years ago. Maybe Michael's fate wouldn't feel like a locked door I had thrown away the key to. Upstairs, I heard Harold moving about, the floorboards groaning under his weight. For decades, that sound had been my comfort, the rhythm of a shared life. Now it echoed like the footsteps of a jailer. I clutched the photograph tighter. My silence had kept him safe, but it had also kept me chained. I thought of the FBI agents, their sharp eyes, their clipped questions. They had seen through the cracks I had ignored. They weren't carrying this weight, I was. The cost of denial is heavy, I realized. It steals your sleep, your trust, your very sense of self. And after 47 years, I could no longer carry it. For the first time, I whispered into the empty room, "Michael, forgive me." The silence answered back, heavier than ever. The knock came again, louder this time. I opened the door and the two FBI agents stood there, their faces grave. The taller one, Agent Harris, spoke first. "Mrs. Caldwell, we need to talk." I stepped aside, my palms clammy. They entered, setting their briefcases on the coffee table as if they intended to dissect my life piece by piece. Harold remained upstairs. The weight of his footsteps paused like he was listening through the floor. Agent Harris leaned forward. "We've uncovered more evidence. Enough to charge your husband. But here's the reality. You've been withholding information. If you continue to protect him, you could be seen as complicit." The words sliced through me. "Complicit," I whispered. I didn't know." The second agent, a woman named Daniels, fixed her eyes on me. "You found items in the attic. You didn't report them. That's obstruction." My breath caught. They knew, somehow they knew. I folded my hands tightly in my lap to stop them from trembling. "Mrs. Caldwell," Harris continued, voice steady but not unkind, "we're giving you a choice. Cooperate with us, tell us everything, testify if needed, or risk being implicated yourself. Loyalty won't protect you anymore. Not in the eyes of the law." I felt the room tilt. My husband's voice echoed in my head. "Move on, forget, it's all in the past." For 47 years I had obeyed that command. But now the past stood in my living room wearing FBI badges. "Do you love your husband?" Daniels asked suddenly. The question stunned me. My lips parted but no sound came. Did I? Did love survive betrayal, lies? The possibility that he'd taken Michael from me in ways I hadn't dared to imagine? I closed my eyes, and for a moment I saw Michael's smile. The night he left, the way I stood at the window waiting for footsteps that never came. My chest burned. I loved him, I said finally, my voice raw. "But love isn't supposed to feel like this." The agents exchanged a glance, then Harris nodded. "Then you know what you need to do." I sat in silence, torn apart. Upstairs, the floor creaked again. He was still there, hovering, waiting for me to choose him. After nearly half a century of marriage, he still expected my silence to protect him. But silence had already cost me a son. I looked up, meeting Daniel's gaze. What happens if I cooperate? You testify. You hand over everything you've hidden. You stand with us when we bring him in, she replied. It will hurt, but it will also free you, free me. The words wrapped around my heart like both salvation and punishment. I stood slowly, gripping the edge of the chair for balance. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. Then take me through everything you need. I won't lie for him anymore. The decision felt like a blade cutting through 47 years of loyalty. Sharp, final, irreversible. Upstairs, Harold's footsteps finally moved. Heavy, deliberate, descending the stairs. The air thickened as his shadow stretched across the hallway. The agent straightened, ready. I stayed seated, clutching Michael's photograph in my lap, my answer already given. For the first time, I chose truth over him. The courthouse smelled of old wood and nervous sweat. I sat in the gallery, hands clasped so tightly that my knuckles ached. Harold shuffled into the room, shackled, thinner than I'd ever seen him. The years that once gave him dignity now clung like decay. When the charges were read, conspiracy, obstruction, suspicion tied to Michael's disappearance, I felt the walls of my life collapse. The man I'd lain beside for 47 years stood accused not only of breaking the law, but of betraying the very core of our family. Witnesses stepped forward. A former neighbor spoke of the late-night arguments, of Michael crying. Rachel, the woman from his past, recounted her affair, her voice trembling, as she admitted to a night that ended in screams. Each word landed like a hammer, splintering what little illusions I had left. I stared at Harold. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, he looked down, his shoulders sagging as though the weight of his lies finally pressed him into submission. The prosecutor's voice cut sharp across the chamber. For decades, this man built a facade of marriage and respectability. Behind closed doors, he wove deception, silenced truths, and destroyed the very people he claimed to love. Every syllable struck me. My marriage was being dissected in front of strangers, laid bare like a crime scene. And maybe that's what it had always been, a carefully staged performance with me as the unwitting accomplice. When Harold finally spoke, his voice was cracked. I never meant for it to happen. I thought I could control it, keep it buried. I loved her. I loved my wife. The words twisted inside me. Love doesn't bury a son's memory. Love doesn't demand silence for nearly 5 decades. The judge's gavel brought the proceedings to order, but in my mind the sound was final, like the slamming of a cell door. My vows, for better or worse in sickness and in health, were ashes now. I rose from my seat when the court adjourned. My knees shook, but I forced myself to walk, each step away from Harold heavier and freer all at once. People's eyes followed me, but I didn't care. Outside, the autumn air bit against my cheeks. I inhaled deeply, realizing it was the first true breath I'd taken in years. Behind me, the courthouse loomed, swallowing Harold into its stone belly. Ahead of me stretched a road I did not recognize. Lonely, uncertain, but mine. For 47 years I was bound by vows that had become chains. Today those vows shattered. I walked on, clutching nothing, no ring, no hand, no illusion. Only the fragile, painful freedom of truth. And though my heart felt broken, I knew, at last, I was no longer his prisoner.